Julien Morel's world was painted in the muted greens and browns of rural Louisiana, a landscape far removed from the glittering kitchens he would one day command. His childhood home, a modest farmhouse nestled beside a slow-moving bayou, offered little in the way of grand culinary inspiration. Yet it was here, amidst the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine, that the first spark ignited. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a slow, simmering realization, much like a roux patiently coaxed to a deep, nutty brown. His grandmother, a woman whose hands told stories of 1,000 meals, was the unwitting catalyst. Her kitchen was the heart of their home, a sanctuary of warmth and intoxicating aromas. While other children played with toy soldiers or dolls, Julien, barely tall enough to see over the worn wooden counter, would stand on a rickety stool, mesmerized. He watched, fascinated, as she transformed humble ingredients, fresh-caught catfish, garden-grown okra, pungent garlic, into dishes that sang with flavor. He learned the rhythm of chopping, the sizzle of oil, the gentle art of seasoning by instinct rather than measure. One sweltering afternoon, his grandmother was preparing her famous gumbo. Julien, then 7, was tasked with stirring the roux, a critical step that demanded unwavering attention. The heat from the cast-iron pot radiated upwards, beads of sweat forming on his brow, but he didn't falter. He stirred, slowly, deliberately, watching the flour and oil deepen from pale gold to amber, then to a rich, dark chocolate. The aroma shifted, becoming complex, earthy, promising. In that moment, a profound connection formed. It wasn't just food, it was alchemy, a transformation of raw elements into something magical, something that brought joy and comfort. He remembered the first time he truly tasted something, not just ate it. It was a simple tomato, plucked ripe from the vine, still warm from the sun. His grandmother sliced it, sprinkled it with sea salt, and handed it to him. The burst of sweet acidity, the subtle earthiness, the delicate balance of flavors, it was an explosion on his young palate. From then on, every meal became an exploration. He'd dissect flavors, trying to identify each component, imagining how they could be combined differently, enhanced, elevated. He started experimenting in secret, using scraps from the kitchen, often with disastrous but always educational results. His parents, practical farmers, saw his culinary inclinations as a charming hobby, a phase he would outgrow. But Julien knew, with a certainty that belied his age, that this was more than a hobby. It was a calling. He devoured cookbooks, poring over recipes like sacred texts, dreaming of exotic ingredients and intricate techniques. He sketched elaborate restaurant layouts in his school notebooks, designing menus that existed only in his imagination. The bayou, once his entire world, now felt too small. He yearned for a stage where his creations could truly shine, a place where the magic he felt in his grandmother's kitchen could be amplified, perfected, shared with the world. The seed of l'étoile diminuée, though unnamed and unseen, was planted deep within his soul, a tiny, burning star in the vast darkness of his rural dreams. The scent of the bayou was replaced by the acrid tang of burnt sugar and boiling stock. Julien, now 18, had traded the quiet solitude of his grandmother's kitchen for the cacophony of a bustling city restaurant. His first apprenticeship was at Le Cochon Noir, a renowned bistro in New Orleans, famous for its robust, no-nonsense French Creole fare. It was a brutal awakening. The kitchen was a crucible, a relentless inferno where passion was forged or extinguished. Chef Antoine Dubois, a man whose temper was as fiery as his sauces, ruled with an iron fist and a sharp tongue. Julien, fresh-faced and eager, was immediately thrown into the deep end. He started at the bottom, peeling mountains of potatoes, scrubbing pots until his hands ached, and enduring Dubois's scathing critiques. "Morel, this onion is weeping more than a heartbroken lover," Dubois would bellow, tossing a poorly diced vegetable back onto Julien's cutting board. The hours were punishing, the pay meager, and sleep a luxury. Many apprentices buckled under the pressure, but Julien, fueled by his childhood dream, persevered. Each insult, each grueling task, was a lesson, a step closer to the perfection he craved. He learned discipline, precision, and the unforgiving rhythm of a professional kitchen. He watched the senior chefs, their movements fluid and efficient, their knives extensions of their hands. He absorbed every technique, every secret, like a sponge. Chef Dubois, despite his harsh exterior, recognized the raw talent and unwavering dedication in Julien. He saw a reflection of his younger self, a spark that refused to be extinguished. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Dubois began to guide him, offering subtle pointers, assigning more complex tasks, pushing Julien beyond his perceived limits. It was during this time that Julien encountered his first true rival, a sous chef named Marc. Marc was older, more experienced, and possessed a natural flair that Julien initially envied. Their competition was unspoken but fierce, a constant dance of one-upmanship in the kitchen. Marc's dishes were often flamboyant, daring. Julien's, while technically flawless, sometimes lacked that audacious spark. This rivalry, however, pushed Julien to innovate, to infuse his precision with a touch of daring, to understand that true excellence wasn't just about flawless execution, but also about creative expression. One evening, during a particularly chaotic service, the lead saucier collapsed from exhaustion. Dubois, with a rare flicker of trust in his eyes, pointed at Julien. "Morel, you're on sauces. Don't you dare mess this up." The pressure was immense, the stakes impossibly high. Julien's hands trembled as he took over, but his mind was clear. He remembered Dubois's lessons, his grandmother's patient guidance. He moved with a newfound confidence, tasting, adjusting, balancing. The sauces flowed, rich and complex, each one a testament to his burgeoning skill. That night, the plates left the pass perfectly, and Dubois, with a gruff nod, offered the closest thing to praise Julien had ever received. "Not bad, Morel. Not bad at all." That night, Julien walked home through the quiet, gaslit streets of the French Quarter, the exhaustion a dull ache, but his spirit soaring. He had faced the fire and emerged stronger. The dream of L'Étoile de Minuit, once a distant star, now felt a little closer, its light a little brighter, guiding him through the darkness of his arduous apprenticeship. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was ready. He was becoming the chef he was meant to be. Years blurred into a relentless cycle of kitchens, each one a stepping stone, each a lesson. From the bustling brasseries of Paris to the avant-garde establishments of New York, Julien honed his craft. He worked under Michelin-starred chefs, absorbing their philosophies, dissecting their techniques, and always pushing himself further. He learned to respect tradition while simultaneously yearning to break its confines, to forge something entirely new. The dream of L'Étoile de Minuit, once a nebulous concept, began to crystallize, taking on a distinct form and flavor in his mind. It wouldn't just be a restaurant, it would be an experience, a journey for the senses. A place where every ingredient told a story, every plate a masterpiece, every meal an unforgettable memory. He envisioned a space that was elegant yet understated, a sanctuary where food was elevated to an art form. The name, L'Étoile de Minuit, came to him during a sleepless night, staring at the urban sky, a single, brilliant star piercing through the city's light pollution. It symbolized his ambition, to create a beacon of culinary excellence, shining brightest when all else was dark. But dreams, especially grand ones, demand sacrifice. Julien poured every waking hour, every ounce of his being, into this singular pursuit. Relationships withered, friendships faded. His family, still in Louisiana, became distant voices on infrequent phone calls. He saw their concern, their quiet pleas for him to find a more stable, less consuming path, but he couldn't. The fire within him burned too fiercely to be contained by conventional expectations. He lived frugally, saving every penny, investing in rare cookbooks, traveling to remote regions to taste forgotten ingredients, always chasing that elusive perfection. He worked grueling double shifts, often sleeping only a few hours before rising again, his mind already racing with new ideas for dishes, new flavor combinations. His hands, once soft from the bayou mud, were now calloused and scarred, a testament to countless hours spent wielding knives and enduring burns. The physical toll was immense, but the mental strain was even greater. The obsession with excellence, a trait he once considered his greatest strength, began to show its darker side. He became withdrawn, critical, seeing flaws where others saw beauty, always striving for an unattainable ideal. His former rival, Mark, now a successful chef with his own popular bistro, once tried to pull him aside. "Julien, you're going to burn out," he'd warned, a genuine concern in his voice. "There's more to life than just the kitchen." Julien had dismissed him, convinced Mark simply didn't understand the depth of his vision. He couldn't afford distractions, couldn't allow anything to compromise his singular focus. L'Etoile de Minuit wasn't just a restaurant, it was his destiny, his identity. And to achieve it, he was willing to pay any price, even if that price was his own peace of mind. He found a dilapidated building in a forgotten corner of the city, a place with good bones and a quiet dignity, much like himself. It was perfect. He saw past the peeling paint and broken windows, envisioning the gleaming kitchen, the elegant dining room, the hushed reverence of diners experiencing his art. The sacrifices had been immense, the path arduous, but standing before that building, Julien felt a surge of defiant hope. The dream was no longer just a dream, it was a tangible, demanding reality, waiting to be brought to life. Every loan he'd secured was poured into the renovation of the old building. He personally oversaw every detail, from the custom-made dinnerware to the precise angle of the lighting, convinced that perfection in every element was non-negotiable. The kitchen, his sanctuary, was a marvel of gleaming stainless steel and state-of-the-art equipment, but the cost had been astronomical. He was deeply in debt, the weight of it a constant, suffocating presence. The initial weeks were brutal. The city, accustomed to flashier openings, was slow to notice the quiet elegance of L'Etoile de Minuit. Reservations were sparse, and the few diners who came often left without the effusive praise Julien craved. He worked tirelessly, often sleeping on a cot in the back office, driven by a fear of failure that gnawed at his insides. He pushed his small staff to their limits, demanding the same impossible standards he set for himself. His obsession, once a driving force, began to manifest as paranoia. He suspected every minor error was a deliberate act of sabotage, every lukewarm review a personal attack. His personal life, already threadbare, disintegrated further. He had met a kind, artistic woman named Clara during his time in New York, who had been drawn to his intensity and vision. She had followed him to the city, believing in his dream. But the relentless pressure of the restaurant, Julien's increasing isolation, and his inability to see beyond the kitchen walls slowly eroded their connection. He would often forget dates, dismiss her concerns, or simply be too exhausted to engage. Clara, once his confidant, became another casualty of his single-minded pursuit. One quiet morning, she left, leaving only a note that spoke of a love that couldn't survive in the shadow of a star. The financial pressure mounted. Suppliers threatened to cut off credit, and the bank called with increasing frequency. Julien found himself staring at ledgers late into the night, the numbers a stark, unforgiving reality. He considered cutting corners, compromising on ingredients, but the thought was anathema to him. L'Etoile de Minuit was an extension of his soul. To cheapen it would be to cheapen himself. He sold off personal possessions, borrowed from old acquaintances, anything to keep the doors open, to maintain the illusion of stability. One particularly slow Tuesday night, with only 2 tables occupied, Julien stood in the empty dining room, the soft glow of the chandeliers reflecting in his tired eyes. He felt a profound sense of despair, a cold, creeping doubt that perhaps his dream was nothing more than a delusion. He had sacrificed everything, alienated everyone, and for what? A half-empty restaurant and a mountain of debt. He thought of his grandmother's warm kitchen, the simple joy of a perfectly ripe tomato. Had he lost that joy in his relentless pursuit of greatness? The silence of the dining room was deafening, echoing his deepest fears. L'Etoile de Minuit, his midnight star, felt like it was fading, threatening to plunge him into an abyss of failure. Just as despair threatened to consume him, a flicker of hope appeared, as unexpected and brilliant as a comet. A notoriously reclusive and influential food critic, known only by her pen name, The Palate, booked a table at l'Etoile de Minuit. Julien, usually oblivious to such matters, felt a tremor of apprehension and excitement. He knew this was his chance, perhaps his only chance, to prove the worth of his unwavering vision. He meticulously prepared every dish, overseeing each plate with an intensity that bordered on feverish. The kitchen was a hive of focused energy, every chef aware of the silent, discerning presence in the dining room. The review, when it finally appeared in the city's most prestigious culinary magazine, was a revelation. It wasn't just positive, it was effusive, a poetic ode to Julien's artistry. The palate described l'Etoile de Minuit as a sanctuary of flavor, a place where each dish tells a story, a whispered secret from the chef's soul. She lauded Julien's uncompromising dedication to ingredients, his masterful technique, and his ability to transform simple elements into culinary poetry. The review singled out his signature dish, Étoile de mer, a delicate scallop preparation, as a celestial experience. The impact was immediate and seismic. Overnight, l'Etoile de Minuit transformed from a struggling, half-empty restaurant into the hottest reservation in the city. The phone rang incessantly, the booking system crashed, and a waiting list stretched for months. Diners flocked from all corners, eager to experience the magic the palate had described. Julien, initially overwhelmed, found a renewed sense of purpose. The financial pressures eased, replaced by the exhilarating challenge of meeting unprecedented demand while maintaining his exacting standards. He expanded his team, carefully selecting chefs who shared his dedication, though few could match his relentless drive. The kitchen, once a place of quiet desperation, now hummed with a vibrant energy. Julien, still intense, still demanding, began to allow himself small moments of satisfaction. He saw the joy on his diners' faces, heard their murmurs of appreciation, and felt a profound sense of validation. His grandmother, receiving a newspaper clipping of the review, called him, her voice thick with pride. Even Mark, his old rival, sent a congratulatory message, acknowledging Julien's hard-won success. This breakthrough wasn't just about critical acclaim or financial stability, it was a confirmation of his life's work. It proved that his sacrifices, his unwavering belief in his vision, had not been in vain. The star he had chased for so long, l'Etoile de Minuit, was finally shining brightly, illuminating his path. Yet, even in this moment of triumph, a seed of his flaw remained. The praise, while intoxicating, also intensified his obsession. He had achieved recognition, but now the pressure to maintain and surpass it became a new, formidable burden. The pursuit of perfection, once a dream, was rapidly becoming a relentless, all-consuming master. L'Etoile de Minuit ascended rapidly, becoming a culinary landmark. Michelin stars followed, one, then two, cementing Julien's reputation as a visionary. He was hailed as a genius, an artist, the new vanguard of modern cuisine. His face graced the covers of magazines, and food critics from around the globe clamored for a reservation. The restaurant was a perpetual whirlwind of activity, every service a meticulously choreographed ballet of precision and passion. Yet, with each new accolade, the pressure on Julien intensified, twisting his dedication into a suffocating obsession. He became a prisoner of his own success. The joy he once found in creation was slowly replaced by an overwhelming fear of failure. Every dish had to be perfect, every ingredient flawless, every service impeccable. He micromanaged his staff to an extreme, scrutinizing every plate before it left the pass, often sending back dishes for the most minor imperfections. His kitchen, once vibrant, grew tense, the air thick with unspoken anxiety. Chefs walked on eggshells, terrified of incurring his wrath, which could erupt over a misplaced garnish or a slightly overcooked vegetable. Sleep became a luxury he rarely afforded himself. His nights were spent poring over new recipes, sketching intricate plating designs, or simply staring at the ceiling, replaying every service, dissecting every potential flaw. He saw rivals everywhere, convinced that other chefs were waiting for him to stumble, for l'Etoile de Minuit to lose its luster. This paranoia began to isolate him further. He distanced himself from his few remaining friends, unable to relax, unable to trust. The world outside the restaurant's walls seemed distant, irrelevant. The critics, once his champions, now became his tormentors. Their expectations were astronomical, their reviews dissecting his every move. A single lukewarm sentence in an otherwise glowing review would send him into a spiral of self-doubt and fury. He started to see them as adversaries, their words capable of dismantling the empire he had so painstakingly built. He'd spend hours researching their past reviews, trying to anticipate their tastes, to cater to their whims, losing sight of his own culinary voice in the process. One evening, during a particularly high-stakes service with several prominent critics in attendance, a young commis chef, overwhelmed by the pressure, dropped a tray of delicate amuse-bouches. The shattering sound echoed through the usually hushed kitchen. Julien, his face a mask of cold fury, dismissed the chef on the spot, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. The incident left the entire team shaken, and a palpable chill settled over the kitchen. Later, alone in his office, Julien felt a pang of regret, a fleeting glimpse of the man he used to be, but it was quickly overshadowed by the relentless demand for perfection. He was L'Etoile de Minuit, and L'Etoile de Minuit demanded everything. The star that once guided him now burned with a fierce, destructive heat, threatening to consume him entirely. The third Michelin star was within reach, a glittering prize that consumed Julien's every thought. He pushed himself and his team harder than ever, convinced that this final accolade would validate his entire existence. The kitchen became a pressure cooker, the atmosphere thick with tension and the unspoken fear of disappointing their increasingly volatile chef. Julien's obsession had reached a fever pitch. He saw conspiracies in every delayed delivery, sabotage in every minor mistake. His once brilliant culinary intuition was clouded by anxiety, his creativity stifled by the relentless pursuit of an abstract ideal. Then came the review. It wasn't from the palate, his former champion, but from a new, equally influential critic, known for her sharp wit and even sharper pen. The article, titled "The Emperor's New Garnish," was a brutal, surgical dissection of L'Etoile de Minuit. It accused Julien of losing his soul, of sacrificing innovation for sterile perfection, of creating food that was technically brilliant but utterly devoid of joy. Morel, she wrote, has built a monument to his ego, not to gastronomy. His dishes are cold, precise, and utterly forgettable, like a perfectly executed but passionless symphony. She concluded by stating that L'Etoile de Minuit, once a shining star, had become a black hole, sucking the life out of its patrons and its chef. The review hit Julien like a physical blow. He read it again and again, each word a poisoned dart. The public, ever fickle, began to echo the sentiment. Reservations plummeted. The buzz that had surrounded L'Etoile de Minuit for years turned into a murmur of disappointment. His staff, already stretched thin, began to leave, one by one, seeking refuge in less demanding kitchens. The loyal few who remained walked on eggshells, their faces etched with concern and exhaustion. His paranoia, once a simmering undercurrent, now erupted into full-blown suspicion. He accused his remaining chefs of disloyalty, of deliberately undermining him. He saw the critics as a cabal, conspiring to bring him down. He locked himself in his office, poring over old menus, trying to pinpoint where he had gone wrong, where the passion had been replaced by sterile ambition. He tasted his own food, once a source of immense pride, and found it wanting. The critic's words resonated with a terrifying truth he had refused to acknowledge. One particularly devastating blow came from his old rival, Marc. Marc, now a celebrated chef in his own right, was interviewed shortly after the scathing review. When asked about Julien, Marc, with a hint of sadness, said, "Julien always chased perfection, but he forgot that food is about connection, about heart. You can't cook with just your head, you need your soul." The words, delivered with genuine regret, stung more than any critic's venom. It was a betrayal not of friendship, but of a shared understanding, a reminder of the path he had strayed from. Julien stood in his once bustling kitchen, now eerily quiet, the gleaming surfaces reflecting his hollow eyes. The third Michelin star, once so close, now seemed an impossible dream, replaced by the crushing weight of failure. L'Etoile diminuit, his life's work, was crumbling around him, a victim of his own relentless, unforgiving pursuit of an unattainable ideal. The star had not just faded, it had imploded, leaving behind only darkness and the bitter taste of regret. The implosion of L'Etoile diminuit was swift and brutal. The restaurant, once a beacon of culinary aspiration, became a ghost of its former self. Reservations dwindled to nothing, staff scattered, and the once vibrant kitchen fell silent, its gleaming surfaces gathering dust. Julien, stripped of his identity as the celebrated chef, retreated into a profound darkness. The restaurant, his life's work, had become a mausoleum of his ambition, and he, its sole, tormented inhabitant. He spent his days in a haze of self-recrimination, the critic's words echoing in his mind like a relentless drumbeat. Cold, precise, utterly forgettable. He replayed every decision, every harsh word, every missed opportunity for connection. The joy he once derived from cooking was replaced by a bitter emptiness. He couldn't bring himself to enter the kitchen, the sight of his once sacred tools now a painful reminder of his failure. The aroma of food, once his greatest comfort, now triggered a wave of nausea. Doubt, a foreign concept to the once unwavering Julien, became his constant companion. Had he ever truly been good? Or was it all a fluke, a temporary illusion of talent? He questioned his passion, his dedication, everything he had believed about himself. The obsession with excellence, which had propelled him to such heights, now consumed him, leaving him hollowed out and adrift. He felt a profound sense of isolation, a self-imposed exile from the world he had once sought to conquer. His few attempts to reconnect with the outside world were met with awkward pity or thinly veiled judgment. He tried calling his family, but their well-meaning concern felt like an accusation. He thought of Clara, the woman he had pushed away, and the regret was a sharp, physical pain. He had sacrificed genuine human connection for a dream that had ultimately betrayed him. The silence of his empty apartment was deafening, punctuated only by the relentless whispers of his inner demons. One night, driven by a desperate need for something familiar, he found himself wandering the streets, eventually stopping outside a small, unassuming bistro. Through the window he saw Mark, his old rival, laughing with his staff, the kitchen alive with warmth and camaraderie. The sight was a stark contrast to the desolate silence of L'Etoile diminuit, a painful reminder of what he had lost, not just in terms of success, but in terms of humanity. Mark's words, "You can't cook with just your head, you need your soul," resonated with a crushing truth. Julien returned to his dark, empty restaurant, the weight of his failure pressing down on him. He sat at one of the pristine, unused tables, staring at the reflection of his broken self in the polished surface. The midnight star, once a symbol of his soaring ambition, now felt like a distant, mocking light, reminding him of the vast, cold emptiness he had created. He was lost, adrift in a sea of despair, unsure if he would ever find his way back to the passion that had once defined him. The darkness, though profound, was not absolute. A faint glimmer, like a distant star, began to pierce through Julien's despair. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a slow, arduous climb back from the abyss. The catalyst was unexpected, a letter from his grandmother. It wasn't filled with platitudes or advice, but a simple, handwritten recipe for her gumbo, the very dish that had first ignited his passion. Tucked inside was a dried bay leaf, its scent faintly evoking memories of home and warmth. He stared at the recipe, then at the bay leaf, and for the first time in months, a flicker of something other than despair stirred within him. He remembered the pure, unadulterated joy of cooking, the simple act of transforming ingredients into something nourishing and delicious. It wasn't about stars or critics or accolades, it was about connection, about sharing, about the magic he had felt as a child. He realized that his obsession with excellence had twisted his passion, turning it into a weapon against himself and those around him. Slowly, tentatively, he returned to the kitchen. Not the grand, silent kitchen of L'Etoile diminuit, but a small, humble space he rented in a quiet neighborhood. He started with simple things, familiar flavors. He made his grandmother's gumbo, carefully stirring the roux, letting the aromas fill the small room. He tasted, adjusted, and for the first time in years, he cooked for himself, for the sheer pleasure of it. He rediscovered the tactile joy of kneading dough, the vibrant colors of fresh vegetables, the subtle nuances of herbs and spices. He began to experiment again, but this time, without the crushing weight of expectation. He wasn't trying to impress critics or earn stars. He was trying to rediscover his own culinary voice. He learned to embrace imperfections, to see them not as failures, but as character. He started inviting friends, and even some former colleagues, to taste his creations. Their honest feedback, free from the pressure of a professional setting, was a balm to his wounded soul. He found a new resilience, a quiet strength born from humility and self-reflection. One day, Mark visited him. There was no rivalry, no judgment, just a shared understanding. Mark tasted Julien's new dishes, simpler, more soulful, yet still imbued with his signature precision. "You found it again, didn't you?" Mark said, a genuine smile on his face. "The heart." Julien nodded, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. He had learned that true excellence wasn't about flawless execution alone, but about infusing every dish with genuine emotion, with a story, with a piece of himself. He had fallen, but in the process, he had found something far more valuable than any star: balance, humanity, and a renewed, purer passion for the art of cooking. The midnight star, once a symbol of his destructive ambition, was now a gentle, guiding light, illuminating a path towards a more authentic and fulfilling culinary journey. Julien Morel never reopened La Toile de Minuit. Instead, he opened a new restaurant, a smaller, more intimate establishment called Le Cœur Ouvert, the Open Heart. It was a deliberate choice, a reflection of his transformed philosophy. The decor was warm and inviting, the kitchen visible to diners, fostering a sense of connection and transparency. The menu was a testament to his journey, refined, innovative, but always rooted in the soulful flavors of his Louisiana upbringing and the lessons learned from his grandmother. Each dish told a story, not of ambition, but of love, resilience, and the joy of sharing. Le Cœur Ouvert quickly gained a reputation, not just for its exquisite food, but for its unique atmosphere. Critics, including The Palate, returned, not to dissect, but to celebrate. Her second review of Julien's work was even more glowing than the first, praising his newfound balance and the profound emotional depth of his cuisine. "Julien Morel," she wrote, "has not just rediscovered his passion, he has redefined it." Le Cœur Ouvert is a reminder that the greatest culinary achievements are born not from ego, but from the heart. This time, the praise felt different. It was validating, not suffocating. Julien, though still dedicated to excellence, had shed his crippling obsession. He fostered a kitchen environment built on respect, collaboration, and mentorship. He encouraged his chefs to experiment, to find their own voices, to embrace the joy of cooking. He became a mentor, guiding young talents with patience and wisdom, sharing not just techniques, but the invaluable lessons he had learned about balance and humanity. He even reconnected with Clara, not as a lover, but as a cherished friend, sharing stories and laughter over meals at Le Cœur Ouvert. His legacy extended beyond the walls of his restaurant. He established a foundation to support aspiring chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds, ensuring that passion, not privilege, dictated access to culinary education. He wrote a cookbook, not a collection of intricate recipes, but a philosophical exploration of food, memory, and the importance of cooking with soul. It became a bestseller, inspiring a new generation of chefs to prioritize connection and authenticity over mere technical prowess. Years later, Julien, his hair now streaked with silver, stood in the bustling kitchen of Le Cœur Ouvert, watching his team work with a quiet satisfaction. The aroma of simmering stock, fresh herbs, and roasting vegetables filled the air, a symphony of flavors that spoke of life and joy. He thought of the little boy stirring roux in his grandmother's kitchen, the ambitious apprentice in New Orleans, the driven chef of La Toile de Minuit, and the broken man in the darkness. Each stage had been necessary, each struggle a crucible that forged the man he had become. He had built one of the finest restaurants in the world, not in the way he had originally envisioned, but in a way that was far more profound and enduring. His legacy wasn't just in the stars or the accolades, but in the countless lives he had touched, the palates he had delighted, and the hearts he had opened. The midnight star, once a solitary burning ambition, had transformed into a constellation of shared joy, illuminating the path for generations to come, a testament to the enduring power of passion, resilience, and the open heart.